Good evening. It is Tuesday, August 28th. It is the 7 p.m. business meeting of the North Kingstown School Committee. Would everyone rise, please, to say the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Lorene, could you please call the roll?
Linda Avanzado. Melvoy Benson.
Here.
John Bascardin.
Here.
Larry Cerisi. William Mudge. William Mudge.
Present.
Kimberly Page. Here. Richard Welsh.
Here.
Julia Held. Here. Thank you.
Lorene, could you please do calendars next?
September 3rd, all schools and offices closed for Labor Day. September 5th, Policy Subcommittee meeting, 9 a.m., Central Administration Building. September 10th, CELAC meeting, 6 p.m., Central Administration Building. September 11th, School Committee work session, 7 p.m., North Kingstown High School. And then there is a list of open houses in your packets. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We are going to be tabling the presentation here tonight. Patty Pozzullo will present that on the March 11th agenda for special education. Yes, Mrs. Benson?
Would you make arrangements to have this machine moved in as much as you're not going to be using it tonight?
Yeah, I can ask
The
that.
view of the audience.
Can you move that just a little bit down to the other side?
Thank you.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
make a motion to move the citizens' comment section to the back of the agenda.
You got to be kidding.
I'll second that motion.
You got to be kidding.
So we have a motion and a second to move citizens' comments to the end. Lorene, if we could take a roll call vote.
They got to get 60%.
William Mudge.
No.
Kimberly Page.
Yes.
Richard Welsh.
Yes.
Melvoy Benson.
No.
John Bascardin. Motion passes 3-2.
I object to that. The motion didn't pass. You need 66%, two-thirds to change the order of the agenda. Thank you. Robert's Rules of Order.
We're going to move into superintendent's report.
Point of information.
Yes, Mr. Mudge.
Are we going to follow the agenda?
We are now moving into routine business.
Thank you.
So routine business items, Lorene, could you please, we need a motion to seal the executive minutes.
Point of order again.
I'm going to
We
finish my
have
sentence.
departing, point of order, we are departing from our agenda, and we have not had a two-thirds majority vote to depart from the agenda. That's Robert's Rules of Order.
Thank you, Mr. Mudge.
May I,
So,
Madam Counsel, would you please pass on that?
You know that we have a policy here, we change items on the agenda.
No, I didn't ask that. What is Robert's Rules of Order?
We don't follow Robert's Rules of Order.
I know we don't. That's the problem. Okay? Oh, my God.
the next item on the agenda is I'm looking for a motion to seal the executive session minutes for August 28, 2012.
So moved.
Second?
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
No.
Motion passes.
Madam
Lorene,
Chair.
disclosure of executive session votes.
Madam Chair.
Hold on.
Thank you. I'll wait.
There were no votes to disclose tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Benson.
I would appreciate it if you would have a roll call vote when we take something as serious as the last motion.
I will take a roll call vote, Mrs. Benson. Thank you. Consent agenda.
Beg your pardon, please. We did take a vote in executive session.
Yes, Mr. Mudge, but since we're in litigation, that one doesn't have to be disclosed at this time.
Okay, we're moving on to the
According to
consent agenda. Do I have a motion for the consent agenda?
Motion to approve this consent agenda.
I would like to exempt item D, please. Item D, and that's fine today for me.
Okay, I see your hand, Mrs. Benson. We also can take off item E. There is nothing to, under item E. Yes, Mrs. Benson.
That settlement of grievance, there's nothing on that to talk about?
Grievance was tabled in executive session.
Yes, the grievance was tabled for executive session. Remember, I said that at the beginning. Mrs. Benson.
Item F, the Green School.
Those are personnel items. It is not the Green School.
Well, I want to speak about the minutes of the meeting.
I didn't see, no.
So that's item C, Mrs. Benson. Is that what you want to exempt?
Yes.
Okay. So item C is what Mrs. Benson is exempting.
Make a motion to approve the balance of the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion to approve the remainder of the consent agenda. Lorraine, could we have a roll call vote, please?
William Mudge.
No.
Kimberly Page.
Yes.
Richard Welsh.
Yes.
Melvoin Benson.
Yes.
John Biscarden.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-1. Thank you.
All right, Mrs. Benson, we come to item C, work session minutes of August 14th, 2012.
Okay. You mentioned the Green School. I think you did. And also,
I did not mention it today, but you have.
yes, I mentioned it. I'm talking about August 14th.
Okay.
And going through my minutes, I see that the figures are somewhat not correct. And I would like to bring that to your attention. No discussion, but wanted to go on record that the figures concerning the Green School was not correct because you were not able in the minutes and the financial report to decide what column it would go under.
Do I have, okay, thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the work session minutes of August 14th, 2012?
Madam Chair, could I comment on this, please?
You may.
Thank you. I think in that minute, the minutes of the meeting, paragraph F, it was cited and I think omitted that Mrs. Avanzano said that we would be losing $100,000 because we did not accept the Green School for this year. I take umbrage with that, and I'll pass you out here with the fact that, which I said was not in the minutes, that we would be losing $200,000 a year if we had accepted the Green School this year. And I would like the minutes amended to reflect that.
Are you making a motion, Mr. Mudge?
Do I have to make a motion?
Yes.
I make a motion that my comments be fully incorporated into the minutes of the meeting, specifically that we would save $200,000 by the Green School not being located at Davisville Elementary School.
Do I have a second?
Yes, I'll second that motion for clarity of the minutes. Would you please include that, Mrs. Bergen?
Yes, I will.
Clarity of the minutes.
Thank you.
All right, let's take a roll call vote for, to amend the minutes as Mr. Mudge has requested.
Kimberly Page.
Yes.
Richard Welsh.
Yes.
Melvoin Benson.
Yes.
John Biscarden.
Yes.
William Mudge.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously.
Do I have a motion to pass the remainder of the minutes?
So moved. Second.
All right, so I have a motion to pass the remainder of the minutes and a second. Can I have a roll call vote, Lorraine?
Richard Welsh.
Yes.
Melvoin Benson.
Madam Chair, may I ask a question before I cast a vote?
Right now, she's doing a roll call vote, so pretty much you're supposed to be answering yes or no.
Well, I can't give a roll call vote until the question is answered.
Well, it's either a yes or no that you're voting for it, and if you're not voting for it, that's fine.
Well, can I ask a point
No,
of
it's a yes or
information?
no. If she's doing the roll call vote, you just say yes, you vote for it, or no, you don't.
That's what plenty of information.
John Biscardin?
Yes.
Madam Secretary, would you slow up a minute?
Sure.
Would you reread the motion?
It's to approve C2, the executive session minutes of August 14th.
As amended.
As amended.
Correct.
Okay. Yes, we're not on the bad train.
William Mudge?
I'm going to abstain.
Of course you will.
Kimberly Page?
Yes.
Excuse Mr. Piscardin.
Okay, motion passes 4-1.
We next come to item C2, the executive session minutes of August 14th, 2012. Do we need to pull that?
You should, because we didn't distribute them.
Okay, I'm going to ask that item be pulled, and we will have that at our next meeting on the 11th. Item D, Mr. Mudge.
Yes, I would like to refer to page 102 in our packet. In our packet, it says that
Mr. Mudge, could you tell us which report that is so that the rest of us can find it?
it's the type 5B1A. Okay.
Is it the check register, the budget report by gate receipts, the month, the MDR?
It is approval of the fiscal year 13 adjustments, which has to do with the budget.
All right. Right now, this is just financial items that we're approving, so you're jumping ahead.
Well, that's fine, but this is the financial statements which relate to that budget and the documentation provided to us.
Well, I would like to discuss that when we get to that item, but right now, we're still on the consent agenda, and that's not under the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the financial items?
So moved.
Mrs. Benson, are you giving me a second?
I would like to speak. And we're approving the...
I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Yes, second.
I have a second.
Could you
All right, now,
could you
Mrs. Benson.
justify why, before people get to want to ask you a question,
And now I'm
that you
allowing
rush
you to
and
ask the
put the
question.
motion on the floor? That you rush and put the motion on the floor.
Mrs. Benson, do you have a question?
This is America, Mrs. Page.
Yes,
Thank
it
you.
is. So, Mrs. Benson, do you have a question about the motion?
Yes, I do. And I would like to add to it. On the financial report for the check register, am I correct? That's what we're talking about, isn't it?
It is the financial reports, item D.
Okay. I would like an asterisk put beside the names of those retirees and with an explanation as to why we got a refund. Thank you. Did you understand?
Yes, Mr. Mudge.
Yes, with respect to the financial disclosure on item D, another question I had was, how come we don't have a monthly report for fiscal year 13?
You don't have a monthly report for fiscal year 13.
We have July.
Well, you have July.
Is that for fiscal year 13?
Yes, it is
So we're
fiscal
talking
year
about
13.
July, so we're talking about the fiscal year 13 budget. And you don't want to, discuss the items that I have related to that.
All right, we're on financial items. Lorraine, could we have a roll call vote?
Richard Welsh,
Yes.
Melvoin Benson,
Yes, with the addition.
John Biscardin,
Yes?
William Mudge,
Nope.
Kimberly Page.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-1.
All right, this brings us to unfinished business, the 2011-2012 school budget.
You don't have anything on that tonight?
All right, so this brings us to the 2012-2013 school year budget.
Time out.
And I'm
I have
going,
some comments on the 12 budget.
well, we're moving on, Mr. Mudge, on to the 12-13, and I'm going to turn this over to the superintendent for the.
This is the item that Mrs. Marge was requesting to talk about, so we're at that point now. I'm going to ask.
I'm not sure that you fully understand the items that I want to talk about. Items.
And I'm telling you, Mr. Mudge, we are on the 2012-2013. I'm going to let the superintendent bring this forward and talk about it, and then you may ask your questions.
What about the 2010 and 2012, where we went
We're
from
not going back to talk about 2010.
It's on the agenda.
2010 is not on the agenda, Mr. Mudge.
2011, 2012, let's start there then.
And I've just told you, there is nothing we need to bring up about that.
There certainly is, because I want, again, an explanation.
No, Mr. Mudge.
It's
we're
on the
not-
agenda, and you're
And there's-
refusing me to discuss an item that's on the agenda?
The superintendent has nothing we need to discuss about that.
But the
so yes.
superintendent, I'm a school committee member, I do. We're talking
Is
about
there a
laying,
motion
we're
on
talking,
the-
we're
is
talking about
there
laying
a
people
motion?
off,
Is
okay?
there a
And you don't want to talk
motion
about
discuss? Okay. So, hold on here, folks. Now. Now, I am looking for a motion. Is there a motion to discuss the 2011-2012 budget?
I make a motion that we complete the discussion of 2011, 2012 due to the early time that we are beginning to go into 2013. I think the fiscal year was
Right,
up
so we have a
in
motion
July.
on the floor. Do I have a second?
Hearing no second, can we please move on?
Time out, we're
Yes.
discussing something
Okay,
here,
we are
please.
now moving on to the 2012-2013. All right.
Why didn't you second it? Why did he second it? No, he didn't. I did. Doesn't matter, you're going to override it anyway.
Here.
I attempted to second it.
Okay, you would like to second it?
Yes.
Okay. Lorraine, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Melvoin Benson. This is your motion.
This is your
Yes,
motion.
my motion?
Yes.
Yes.
John Biscardin,
Yes.
William Mudge.
Yes.
Kimberly Page,
No.
Richard Welsh.
Abstain.
Okay.
Motion
Mrs. Benson.
3-1.
Mrs. Benson, is there something you wanted to talk about with the 2011-2012 budget?
Yes. You mentioned earlier that I was a little late in bringing your attention to the overpayment of life insurance for retirees.
All right, Mrs.
And I would
Benson, this
like
is,
to
does need to be
also-
on the budget, not one particular item.
They were taken care
talking
of
about?
in 2012, and that's the budget we are discussing. But if it doesn't come up to your specification, I will cease to speak about it.
Mr. Mudge, what did you want to say about the 2011-2012 budget?
What I wanted to, let's say, about the 2011 and 2012 budget is that since last January, we went from $1 million deficit, okay, with the 2012 budget to, I believe, probably in the neighborhood of a $700,000 surplus. Not $400,000, $700,000 surplus. And I would like to have some discussion on that, okay? And I say that specifically because that included that deficit, surplus of, in my estimate, close to $700,000, included the fact that we lost $266,000 of revenue by a decision that Judge Stearns issued in May. That's a lot of money, It's a lot of money, close to $1 million. But we also were able to afford and pay our janitorial staff, our complete staff for that matter, for the entire year, their salaries. And we still saved, $800,000, $1 million. So I think
Mr. Mudge, do you have Mr. Mudge,
Yes,
I'm going to
and
let
I-
the administration
and
jump in to correct your numbers.
I haven't really finished yet.
Well, I'm going to let them jump
Finish,
in
yeah.
and correct your numbers.
Yeah, okay. Be careful.
The FY 2012 estimated surplus is not $700,000. It's $470,000. Your entire surplus from previous years is estimated at $700 and some thousand. For FY 12 alone, it is not $700,000, Mr. Mudge.
Okay, can we discuss that, please?
Certainly.
Discuss, sure. So,
I've seen a couple of hands. Mr. Buskird, you had up your hand.
Well, actually, I was going to ask Ms. King to clarify that for us. That's all she did.
Benson, you had up your hand.
I'll wait until he gets his question answered.
Okay, Mr. Mudge, you have a question.
I said Mr. Bescarding.
Oh, no, she did. My
Your
question was...
question was answered.
Okay, well, I have a question, if you don't mind.
Ask your question.
My question is, and it's a statement with the question. And my statement with the question is, if I give you $10 to buy groceries, and you reach a bargain, and you come back with $7, why do I have to give you 10 each time? Surplus should be taken care of when you've taken care of everything. And we do have some loose ends on the 2012 budget. Thank you.
Mr. Buskird.
Ms. King, could you please clarify for us where under what line item we decided to put the surplus under for 2012?
The surplus actually just falls to our surplus, our accumulated surplus to our bottom line.
which is?
Wasn't there a discussion at one point, and I could be incorrect, that
Well,
monies
that's
were
the...
going to be put into the CIP?
Well, actually, that number that we still have is net of the $200,000 that did go into CIP at the end of June.
Okay, thank you.
So those funds have been used.
I see.
So,
Mr. Mudge.
so what you're saying is I think the correct answer to Mr. Stodden was, in fact, we have currently in our budget surplus, including the surplus supposedly $400,000 this year. We have roughly, as we stand here tonight at this table, about $800,000 of surplus. Is that what we have on hand today?
Approximately, yes, sir.
Yes. Now, that's after we took $200,000. We took $200,000, Mr. Muscadden, okay, and allocated that to additional fiscal year 12 costs, okay? So it would have been $1.2 million. Now, I would like to know what other expenditures did we have that drew our surplus down from $1 million on the ending of the fiscal year to $400 and some thousand.
That information has been provided. I can certainly provide it again to you at the next meeting. Actually, the information was provided, I believe, in June that goes back and shows everything that has been part of that surplus that was used.
Yeah. Well, what I'm leading up to, didn't we have to set aside $100,000, $150,000 to pay back our former retirees some expenditure, or was it $200,000?
I'm sorry, I don't have that in front of me.
Well, I think it was in the neighborhood of at least $100,000 plus. But that was written off. See, that was an expenditure we incurred over the last 10 years, whatever the number was. But that's an expenditure that we wrote off against the 2012 budget, which meant that, in fact, add the $100,000 to the $400,000 we had, now we have $500,000. You say $500,000. And then we add the $50,000, $100,000 of contracts that we awarded in June, okay, that we had no intention of filling and could not be filled this fiscal year. So what we did is we wrote contracts, okay, to pay for fiscal year 13 expenditures, okay, and with fiscal year 12 money. Probably just another $100,000.
I'm sorry, I don't know what you're talking about in that statement.
Well, I'm talking about we ought to go back, and I'm asking for an audit, okay, of all the purchase orders listed, okay, are issued by this school department that was listed and issued with fiscal year 12 money, and the contracts could not be, by law, executed and the work completed in fiscal year 12. For example, you're buying 10 million rolls of toilet paper. You didn't need them for fiscal year 12. You were buying them for fiscal year 13.
So that means the money was not spent until fiscal 13.
No.
We did not buy anything a year ahead of time.
Okay, it's a fiscal year 13 expenditure, and it should have come out of a fiscal year 13 budget, not the fiscal year 12 budget.
It did not come out of fiscal 12 budget.
Okay.
Anything that applies to fiscal 13 comes out of fiscal 13.
Well, then, why did we have so many procurements in the last month of the 2 weeks?
They were procurements to get approval from the school committee to move forward in fiscal 13. Since the school committee does not meet in July, it was done at the end of June, which my understanding, having not been here in a past June, but my understanding is that's been past practice. But those are contracts that need to be approved by RFPs for the school committee. That was the request that was made in June so that we could move forward in July to make the purchases.
What I'm referring to
Mr. Mudge, I'm going to ask that do you have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion, yeah. I'd like to have all the contracts that were issued in the month of June audited for the appropriateness of its expenditure. I believe the expenditure is at least totaling $100,000, which would have added to us 12 surplus by $100,000.
Okay, Mr. Mudge has made a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
There is a motion on the floor, and there is a second.
Okay.
Is there discussion? Is there discussion?
Let me clarify the motion. I would like,
Mr. Mudge, may I?
Go ahead, clarify your motion, Mr.
let me
Mudge.
just clarify that. I would like all the purchase orders examined by an auditor to determine its compliance with Rhode Island general law, our town charter, and school department policy, fiscal policies. Thank you.
Mrs. Benson.
Not a discussion, but a point I'd like to make. Mrs. King, you are absolutely right. It has been past practice for the last 40 years in North Kingstown School Department. I don't know if the teachers got the notice that we received in 80s and the early 90s. If you need any supplies or had something you didn't get last year, please put in your order before the beginning of the fiscal year. So you are right, Mrs. King. It has been a past practice.
Could I make a comment on that, please? The fact of the matter is, if you go back and look at our audit
Yes,
reports...
I will recognize you, Mr. Mudge.
Yes. If you go back and look at our audits over the last several years, you'll find out at least twice, once I recall, that we did audit, and we were finding consistently that the school department were issuing purchase orders when they shouldn't have been. They were not applicable for the fiscal year, okay? We're not applicable to, so we have a serious financial issue again, and an appropriate with contracts, okay? And this is not the first time it's happened. And I would say, at least let's send it to the audit committee, and let the audit committee choose to look at these and see if they were appropriate.
Mr. Busgarden.
I'm curious, Mr. Mudge, when these past practices have happened, Ms. King and Mr. Auger were sitting in the same seats, correct?
No.
Well, yeah, well, he was a vice chairman.
And Ms. King was...
Yeah.
Was
not here.
Right. So why do you think that because people that weren't even around anymore, that type of practice is going on now?
Because I just saw it. I saw it. That's why I wanted to audit it.
That's pretty illogical.
It's the truth. reissue.
Is there any other
Okay.
comments? Mr. Mudge, you've had your discussions.
Thank you.
I'd like to.
Let's audit them, prove me wrong.
You know, one of the things I do see is that we are in a tight budget year, and I would have no problem in doing an audit if we need an audit. But having looked through the check register for June, there is nothing that I see in there that is out of ordinary for any other time of when we spend money. I do not think that the administration has spent any money on anything that I see that is out of policy, that is out of unusual. And so it is the sort of thing of having been on the school committee for 6 years, I will not be voting to support Mr. Mudge's motion.
Mrs. Page, if I could also comment, we actually have an audit, and there are auditors and an audit firm that come in and do an audit, and those are the kind of things, the payables that they look for. That I sat with the auditors today. There is an audit. We are required to have an audit. Those are the kind of items that they bring forward should they find them.
Well, I will
So it
say,
sounds like from what you said that we're already going through a normal audit. I don't know if I would support a special audit.
for just those purchase orders,
Mr. Welch.
Over the last 3+ years, the town auditors have found the school department without any problems. So I think that we're probably going to continue along that way. It's a little different with the town. The town has some issues with the auditor, but the auditor does not have any issues with the school department.
Lorraine, could we take a roll call vote? Could you make sure you read the motion off first, please?
To have all contracts issued in the month of June audited for appropriateness of compliance with Rhode Island general law, the town charter, and fiscal policy.
school policy. yeah.
Mel Boyd Benson.
Yes.
John Biscardin.
No.
William Mudge.
Yes?
Kimberly Page.
No.
Richard Welch.
No?
All right, so now we're moving into 2012-2013 school budget.
Thank you. I'm going to pass this on to Mrs. King. I just want to note that what I'm proposing in front of you right now is to make some adjustments in our 2013 budget. Even though it's early in the year, there are things that we are always looking at that are trending one way or another. One of the major items that caught us a little bit off guard is we're doing a lot better job, I guess, in students who are taking career and tech as an option. And so we have more students than ever that are attending Coventry and Newport for career and tech options, which is a good thing because more kids need to do that. In past years, we've had roughly about 10 kids, and in a district this size, it really doesn't seem to make sense. We're doing some things right now to try to bring some career pathways to North Kingstown so that students will have some options and stay right here on campus. But in the meantime, there are about, at least another 10 kids more than we expected taking advantage of vocational options at Coventry and Newport, another 10 students that are taking advantage of options for local charter schools. As we know, those are growing. So what we need to do right now in order to not be in a deficit is to make some adjustments to the items, and you can see the adjustments that are reflected. They are areas that we think we might be trending in a positive direction, or they're areas that we would look at spending at the end of the year, take that money now, and that would buy us time to make the adjustments needed over the course of the year if some things trend a little bit better so that we continue with a balanced budget. If we don't do this tonight, we would be listed as having a deficit. So I would urge you to take advantage of making these adjustments tonight. Mrs. King, you have anything to add?
Yeah, actually, I would just like to add that it is early in the budget year. We still need to spend some time looking at our salary projections, of which is difficult to do when we really have not truly had a full payroll for the first start of school. People are still moving around and things are still getting settled. So by the end of September, we will have some more information on that. So I do want to again emphasize that it's early, but these items came about on early encumbrances. we wanted to bring them to your attention. Our goal is to also ensure that we brought to you some possible solutions to the issue so that we can continue on with the year. Should these be problems, then we know that we could have a balanced budget.
All right, I see hands. I will ask, is there a motion to approve the FY13 budget adjustments?
So moved.
Second.
All right, Mr. Mudge and then Mrs. Benson.
We done yet? Aren't we going to talk about the fact that we have $647,000 of additional expenditures, and we found $647,000 in the budget, okay, to offset these increases in expenses? For example, fuel, $102,000 went up. Budget went up. Vocational ed, budget went up $390,000. $19,000 a student, by the way. $19,000 a student. And I'm not necessarily against that, okay? Just pointing that out, because as you know, we only charge Jamestown, okay, $10,200, okay, for their tuition. Charter schools went up. 10 more students, $12,100. Or, okay, excuse me, $121,000 more. So that's $500,000 more that we had to come up with to send kids out of district, so forth. Now, charter schools, which is a huge issue with me, that's $12,000 a student for the charter school children to go to, you know, another school. However, we only charge Jamestown, okay, $10,200. And by the way, they get a $500 discount back from the state, so Jamestown really pays us $9,800. Now, there's a source of at least $300,000 of revenue that could help this budget that this committee has refused to look at, which would have saved these jobs, too, by the way.
I'm calling on Mrs. Benson, and then I will call on Mr. Buskard.
I'm not complete yet.
I'm calling on Mrs. Benson.
I haven't completed. I want to talk about the adjustments now.
I'm calling on Mrs. Benson.
Oh, please. This is the United States of America.
I have a question.
Don't you want to know where we're getting the money
Mrs.
from
Benson
to
has a
afford this?
question. She has the floor.
I have a question. I have a question in regards to the superintendent, and I think he would probably be the only one who could answer this question.
You may ask, Mrs. Benson.
Thank you. Superintendent O'Jay, I heard you mention about vocational schools. I am 100% for vocational schools, and I would like to know, what are we doing to train the students in the vocational courses that they would be able to work within the confines of North Kingstown? We have a business park at Quonset that's excellent. It's doing well. But one of our largest tenants cannot hire our students because they cannot read and interpret. I've noticed, Dr. O.J., that many of the schools had summer schools and are writing grants to work with that kind of situation in education. What is our plans to work with that? I'm for getting education and equipping every child to be able to learn a livelihood if he's not able to go to the Naval Academy, that he can work within the plants within our town. Okay, could you answer that question?
Sure. You know, I agree with you 100%. I feel like we have a major industrial park right here in North Kingstown. and that we need to have partnerships with those businesses. As a matter of fact, in this budget, we have approved a business partnerships coordinator. That person will be making a presentation at our next school committee meeting, in fact, to let you know about the work that she's been doing. And part of that role is to do exactly what you're talking about, to bring in partnerships with particularly businesses at Quonset Point, but businesses in the area that can help us with career strands, that they would actually sponsor coursework, help us with funding the technology needed to do the coursework, coach us on the curriculum around the coursework, so that if a student passes a certain pathway, takes certain courses, that they would be then sponsored by that particular business to then, in their senior year, possibly have an internship or some kind of a job shadowing opportunity at that local business. That's what I'm shooting for. If this at some point blossoms into a North Kingstown career in tech at Quonset Point, that would be a dream of mine. And that's something that needs to be built over several years, and I'm dedicated to moving in that type of direction. I think there are, as we just pointed out, there's a lot of money going out of town for career in tech, and I'm not going to stop any student who wants a career in tech experience from going to Coventry or Newport. They have great programs, and next year we're going to be affiliated with Charahoe. I've been there for 9 years. I know it is a top-notch program, and I'd be proud to send kids there. So, I have a dedication to that. I think you do too, and it's something that I'm looking to build. And at our next meeting, I'm going to have Barbara Jackson, who is in that role, starting down that road, and I want her to share with you her plans.
I'm sure Barbara Jackson will do an excellent job. We've served on committees and, in fact, on economic development.
Yes.
But I would like for you to be aware that there are businesses that are up and going. Let's take like Sonesco.
Mrs. Benson, I will remind you, there is a motion on the floor, and the questions are supposed to be...
You're open for discussion, aren't you?
Yes, but their questions are supposed to be surrounding the motion on the floor, which is to approve the recommended budget transfers for FY13. So that's what I'm asking you, is if you have a further question. Otherwise, Mr. Busgarden has had his hand up.
I had a statement that I was making in regard to the timely information that we received from the superintendent. I feel like I'm sitting up here on the fast train between Washington and Boston.
Well, if you'd like to take that train, you may, Mr. Busgarden.
Without a ticket. Okay.
I won't dignify that. I'll consider
Dr. Auger.
the sources from which it cometh.
Dr. Auger, Mrs. Smith.
I consider the source which said it.
Mr. Busgarden, you have the floor.
And remember, when you point your
Mr.
finger at
Busgarden
me,
has
you
the
got
floor.
four at yourself.
I have a question regarding the adjustments we want to make, and in conjunction with the $471,000 in surplus. Mrs. King and Dr. Auger, is that $471,000 earmarked in any way, or do you have thoughts of how that's going to be spent? Because if not, I would like to make a motion to take $150,000 of that to use towards the
John, there's an $800,000 surplus.
I'd like to address that question. It has always been something that, as long as I have been here and in other districts, that it has been a goal to maintain about 2% of your budget as a surplus. Because you never know. We're looking at $600,000 worth of adjustments just tonight. That's what happens when you have a $60 million budget, or approximately, that there are a lot of issues that sometimes they trend in one direction and you get lucky, sometimes they trend in another direction and you don't. Last year, we were dealing with a deficit for a good part of the year. After freezing a number of different areas, we ended up with a surplus. I would maintain it's better to have a surplus than a deficit. So, we now are at a point, 2% would be about $1.2 million. And that kind of money is not money that you can use to purchase, whether it's a contractual obligation or a regular item that gets renewed every year. Because when the town gives us, say, a 1% increase, or this past year they gave us a 2% increase, they only give you an increase on what you have in your regular budget. They don't give you an increase on that surplus. So if we use some of that money this year, for instance, there are a lot of people who have come to me in the past few weeks and asked for a couple more buses because that was part of budget cuts that we recently made. If we use $120,000 of that $800,000, now we have less money in the surplus for an emergency. For instance, if a special ed student should move into the district, we don't have a choice. We have to take care of that student. Or if we have some kind of budgetary issue that we have to handle as an emergency, we don't have a choice. We have to deal with it. So it's not money that gets renewed. So even if we were to figure out a way to do it this year, in all likelihood, the following year, that item would need to be cut. So it's hard to say that we're going to, add teachers at a certain place because that money doesn't get renewed. When the town says, okay, we'll give you a 0% or a 1% or a 2%, that money is not included in that. That money does not come back to the district. It evaporates. It goes away with that particular year that you spend it. It doesn't get renewed. So one of the easier places to do it, and one of the traditional ways that most districts will use that kind of money, and you know this, Mr. Mudge, is with CIP items. Those are items that don't necessarily get renewed every year as capital improvement plan items. So that, for instance, issues like the Quidnesset roof that we're looking at right now. And we took, a lot of criticism from the community about, thank God that the bond passed for the Davisville roof, and that's doing well and it's ready to go. But people feel like we ask for a lot of bonds. If we have a capital improvement fund, we can maintain our buildings the way they need to be maintained. We have millions and millions of dollars of buildings in this district, and they're good buildings. We need to maintain them on a regular basis, as you all know. So that's the kind of money that when you need to fix a roof or when you need to do a significant project, we just moved money for some technology and for some air conditioning at the high school, which is another need. And that's where we use surplus money to move it to the CIP. It's not something that we're going to have to worry about, doing another round, say, of the same technology next year or another round of the same air conditioning next year. That's the kind of thing that's traditionally used for that kind of money.
Thank you for explanation.
Sure.
Yeah, the one thing I would say, I see your hand, Mr. Mudge, I'll call you next. Mr. Buschgarten, the one thing I would caution our committee is that in the past we have used fund balance to fund some of our day-to-day expenses, and essentially what we build into our budgets then is a structural deficit that we are not able to sustain, and it is one of those things that we are always advised against, and it was one of the items that last year the town council took us to task very harshly and sued us when we used CIP, or I should say fund balance to fund our regular expenses. So it is not something that I would feel very comfortable in doing because we were taken to task so harshly last year. I feel fine with taking the CIP money and using it for capital expenses, but not for regular expenses.
I understand the thought process and the theory behind using surplus for one-time expenses, but other than diesel fuel, wouldn't some of those fall under that definition? For, like the
answer is yes.
The kids, the vocational education students. I mean, that's not a recurring cost.
Well, Mr. Buschgarten, if they're in 10th and 11th grade, it is. That means they would be carried forward into the future year. The same with the charter school students,
okay.
And if you have any other out-of-district ones. So those will be go-forward expenses.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Mudge.
Yeah. Ms. Scott was right on, except with the $150,000, I would say we've got $133,000 sitting in our pocket okay, for capital expenses, number one. Number two, I keep saying this, is that we go back and say the council doesn't fund this. That is absolutely incorrect. We have never gone back to them and said, we need $200,000 for a student who just came into the district. We've never asked them that. We never asked them for an emergency expenditure for a roof. That's what they're there for. And there is an $8 million surplus in the town that we can tap, and we should do that. We should not be saying, oh, we can't do this year because we might win the lottery. But in other words, if we don't, what we're doing is penalizing these kids that have to walk from Yorktown all the way to Davisville Middle School, for example. Okay? Now,
Mr. Mudge, we can informally ask the council what they would think about that.
Second of all, what's missing in here, John, is, and you hit it right, what aren't we doing for the $150,000? I want to know that. What aren't we doing? Because that's our decision to say, don't fix this, don't fix that, don't fix this, don't fix that. Once we know what they are, Mr. Scott, then we should go back and say, we're going to appropriate that money. Okay?
Well, since you're speaking directly to me.
No, I'm just trying to, I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah, well, what I'm saying is, if you're speaking directly to me, I will respond that I don't necessarily think that Dr. Auger and Ms. King's explanation is wrong. They clarified that for me. I was looking at the vocation ed students. Wasn't thinking it was more than a senior year.
Yeah, but
so in fact, it's a recurring cost.
But what are the $150,000, John, of expenditures?
I'm going to give Mr.
The maintenance
Mudge a
we're not
chance.
going to do. Is it going to be to fix a leaky roof we can't do? Is it going to fix a boiler we can't do? What aren't we going to do? We should
Chairman,
know
can we please move the
what that
question?
is. Okay? You know, plus we have, we made this deficit up with $300,000 of unexpected savings, not expenditures, because of special education students. Just the opposite happened this year. That was part of the money that we got to afford these $647,000 of increased expenses. So just the opposite happened.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mudge.
in the budget.
I'm going to call on Mrs.
Then another
Benson, and then we do have a
$125,000
question on the floor.
because of the union, okay,
Mrs.
contract.
Benson?
I just wanted to interject since you mentioned special education. The Commissioner of Education at a meeting in June of this year, and the board agreed that if you ran up against an unexpected expense with a special education child and your budget could not afford it, I think they said, and I'm fairly sure, I see a member sitting here in the audience, that you could apply to the commission and they would refund you that money. I don't want people leaving here tonight with an attitude that's been promulgated that special ed children is taking up their money, and that's why you can't do this. We have all students now until they get 21.
Go ahead, Dr. Auger.
I agree with you 100%, Mrs. Benson.
Thank
That's not
you
what this
for once in
$300,000
life.
is all about.
All right, Lorraine, we have a motion on the table. Could you read off the motion and take
Point
a
of
roll call vote?
information. Point of information, please.
Go ahead, Lorraine.
Point of
To
information.
approve the budget transfers.
Point of order.
Yes, Mr. Mudge?
Point of information. Okay?
Are you asking a question?
Yeah, we talked about this money, and Mr. Scott is concerned with than I am, but I would like to everyone know out there, okay? We spent an average
Is this a question, Mr. Mudge?
$2.1 million a year
Mr.
on
Mudge,
the
is this a
maintenance
question?
of these school buildings from school capital reserve
Mr.
funding
Mudge, we're
or
calling
bond
a
money.
question.
So to
I
have
asked
somebody
you if
sit
you
up
had a
here
question,
and say
and you're
that
not
we're not
asking a
properly
question,
funding our
you're
maintenance and
making a
operation
point.
is
Your time
disingenuous.
for this has been over. Marini. Go ahead and call the motion, please.
Kimberly Page.
Yes.
William Mudge.
No.
Richard Welsh.
Yes.
Melboy Benson.
Yes.
John Biscardi.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-1.
Which one are you going to vote on, son?
All right, that brings us to CIP existing bond.
I know
Dr. Jay,
it.
is there
I
anything
vote
that
on
we need to be
that.
updated on that?
But
Yeah, I just wanted to let people know that with the bond that was passed in the spring, the Davisville roof is looking good. It's got a couple more weeks of basically cosmetic-type work, fascias and things of that sort, but it is doing well. I'm going to let Mrs. King talk a little bit about that.
The remaining work that needs to be done, the contractors actually did a very good job considering the amount of rain that we received this year, and they had approximately 8 days that they missed because of rain. They're actually very, very heavy rains, as everybody knows. But even with that said, they do have a couple of weeks of some cosmetic things to finish up and some mechanical on the roof fans and whatnot. They're going to do all of that work after school hours so they don't disrupt the school day. And they should be done with that in a couple of weeks.
The other issue that I'd like to address is the Quidnesset roof. As I mentioned last time, I'm not going to go into too much, but that roof is doing well. We made an adjustment on that this week, and we are looking at the next few weeks to take care of the last item. There is over the cafeteria. Over the cafeteria, there's an item. There is a HVAC system that is inoperable, and it is going to be removed. And it's been the source of one nagging leak in the cafeteria. Other than that, everything is looking good. We are also exploring and on schedule to be using available bond money from this particular bond that we approved this spring, because the Davisville roof came in less than the expenses that we had figured. There is available bond money, and we're going to use that to replace the floor surface at Quidnesset, hopefully. And so we're testing a carpet in the front. That is a project that will take pretty much an entire summer. It's going to involve the movement of all of the furniture out of the main part of Quidnesset, removal of the current surface, put something else in. It's very time-consuming, obviously, and a major project. So it's something that's going to need the whole summer. The timeline we were on last year, we just weren't able to, align it so that we were able to hit the beginning, right at the beginning of the summer, and therefore aren't able to do it, unfortunately. But I've toured the building. It's looking great. It looks dry. I'm very impressed with the way all of our buildings are looking, but particularly Quidnesset right now. So,
Are you looking for us to have any sort of a motion on this, or okay? Mr. Mudge, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I have two comments. I'm glad the roof at AMS got going, obviously, got completed. But, we talk about funding and money again. Here's the roof, and I think the cost was $1.4 million. Well, when it came to the school committee, it was $2.1 originally, then it went up to $3.1 million. And when I attempted to find out what was going on there, I was going to run out of town up here. So the roof, instead of being $3.1 million, cost us $1.4 million. That's $1.7 million. We talk about funding. So there is money available, okay? Unfortunately, we came about it the wrong way, and now the question is we must spend it wisely. And you can bet, and we're gonna have to do that, okay? And I personally want to thank Jim McGuinn for the effort he's put in with regard to the Quidnesset Elementary School roof and the project, and working with the teachers who, worked hard to try to identify the problems. And of course, the leaky roof that's in the cafeteria that has an HVAC system, it's not the HVAC unit that's leaking. It's the roof that's been leaking because it hasn't been sealed properly, and it's been like that for like 2 years, and we still haven't found out what the problem is. So I hope it's going to be corrected, though. Thank you.
I think that was what was just said. Dr. Auger,
Yeah,
would you
after-
like to say
after-
anything about the
yeah,
status
since
of
April,
opening of
too.
schools?
Well, I'm just very happy that we'll be opening school tomorrow, and that we have an agreement with ESP to come on back to school, and I couldn't be happier, and I hope you're all happy as well.
Are we going to let the community know what was decided at the executive committee meeting? Because it's public, it's going to go to court. I think
All
that
right,
we have
thank you,
the, I
Mr.
think we
Mudge.
have the,
Thank you, Mr. Mudge. All right.
and I think we have,
I'm going to remind you that what was in executive session is not to be repeated out here.
by the way, it is not public, I mean, it's not private information. It's court information. You're going to release it
Executive session
tomorrow.
was voted
You're
on
going
to
to
have
court
the minutes
to say you're
sealed.
not accepting the union's offer.
The executive session minutes were sealed, so we are not at liberty to be talking about what was discussed in executive session. All right. That brings us to the next issue on the agenda. Yes, Mrs. Benson.
My point of order is, before I left home, the news announced everything that was in the agreement. So are we going to let the news set our pace, or are we going to do it ourselves?
I believe that Dr. Auger just gave that. that Dr. Auger has given a report of what went on. As he told you, we are going back to school tomorrow.
But we haven't said that we've rejected, okay, the
Mr. Mudge,
listen, it's
we are
public
going back to
information.
school tomorrow.
The unilaterally rejected, okay, the proposal, and we're going to continue on to get the, what do you call it, the...
I move for a recess. Chairman Day, I move for a recess, please.
Mr. Bascardin has moved for a recess. Do I have a second?
John Bascardin.
Mr. Bascardin, what is your vote?
Yes.
Kimberly Page.
Yes.
Richard Welsh.
Yes.
Melvoin Benson.
No, let's complete business.
No,
William Mudge.
no.
Motion passes 3-2.
Don't you need, now, what do you need for a majority to,
Okay. We're taking a recess. All right, call the meeting to order. I'm going to recognize Mr. Welch.
Madam Chairman, I make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I've had a motion by Mr. Welch to adjourn, and I've had a second by Mr. Bascardin. In my discussion with the superintendent, we have covered all the business that we need to cover here tonight. So I will take a roll call vote, Lorraine. Yes. Richard Welch. Yes.
Melvoin Benson.
For your vote. She's asking for your vote.
She's just taking the vote.
Just need to say yes or no.
Motion passes. The North Kingstown School Committee meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Oh.
she was telling me. I don't know, though, she was asking for your...
It's for your
She didn't ask for
raise.
my vote.
No, free raise, I was trying to get your attention, free raise. You're
She
crazy.
didn't ask for my vote.
You folks are gonna work. You're very loose.
Oh, yeah, you're right, I am. Yeah,
You're very loose.
that's been a problem of mine.